For those of you that are this is the first time joining us, we have moved all of our meetings to a virtual format given the state of the pandemic, and will likely continue that for some time into the future. If you are comfortable, I have found that it creates a better level of engagement if folks are comfortable turning on their video cameras. Some of us may need to disconnect from the VPN so that we don't bog down the network, but it would be wonderful if people can do that if you're comfortable. I have some really exciting news today as well. As we've been mentioning, and just so everybody knows, this meeting is being recorded. As we've mentioned during each of the GDMA meetings, we record them. It took us a little while and a little bit of self-educating on video editing, but we have all the videos are available for viewing now. We created a YouTube channel, so we're ready to, so we can share that really easily with everyone. I will send out a link to each of the individual videos after this is all finished. Jason's won't be up by then. It takes a little while for Zoom to pop it into the cloud that we can download it. But we have the previous three. We will also be posting the links to our website once the webmaster for the governor's office is able to post those. And then once they're posted, I'll let everybody know. I'll just send a quick email out letting you guys know. And then we'll be continuing to post those, those meetings that happen during the year there as well. So you can watch them and distribute them and share them as you see fit. So additionally, one other thing, we will be posting, for those of you that attended Professor Stephen Page's meeting, he had some presentation documents that we will also be posting as well there. It just takes us a little bit to get into the queue for the webmaster. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jason Johnson. He is the former Director of Human Services at the City of Seattle. I believe, Jason, you just left your position on Monday. While he was the Director of Human Services, Jason worked on some of like the most challenging issues facing government right now, from homelessness to poverty to managing COVID-19. And the issues that he had to juggle are extremely complex, and they're ever changing. And what feels like a good decision today may be a bad one tomorrow, and managing problems that are far off in the future require us to make tough decisions right now. He will be speaking about his experience doing those and how he approaches each issue and what it means to bring integrity to those difficult challenges. I'm sure he's going to have some really interesting and unique thoughts, especially now that he's had an opportunity to pause and reflect on some of that work. So with that, Jason, I am so happy you can join us. Thank you. This has been wonderful.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Josh. It's really good to be with you, and thanks for the invitation to be with you this afternoon. You know, I still have not fully adapted to the total virtual experience, and I so wish that we could be together in person, enjoying lunch together. You're a prestigious group of public service leaders, and I just feel really fortunate to be with you today. But you know, regardless of the format, I'm looking forward to a conversation. Teed up for me was one focused on integrity and leadership, and I have a few items to share from my experiences, but I'm kind of hoping that this can be a conversation. So I'm going to attempt to be brief in my sort of prepared comments. Though this opportunity and knowing this discussion with you is coming has really unleashed a great deal of reflection, and I hope some of the high-level examples that I want to share with you are helpful in triggering some dialogue today. But before I even get started, I just want to acknowledge the flexibility of each of you at the GDMA. You've worked with changes in my personal and professional schedule, and I just really appreciate finally having the opportunity to be with you. Special thanks to Josh. I know that I have put you in a position to have to adapt schedules and plan speakers. So really just thank you so much. I really wanted to be sure to have this opportunity to be with you today, to speak with you today, and Josh and team really made that possible. So just as a point of introduction, again, my name is Jason Johnson. I'm a social worker. I've been a Washingtonian for about 24, 25 years. I'm originally from Denver, Colorado, moved to Seattle after finishing my master's in social work at the other UW in Madison, Wisconsin. And before joining the public sector, I worked for several nonprofit organizations in Washington, Colorado, and Wisconsin, always aiming to ensure housing stability and supportive services for communities made vulnerable by poverty, disease, and disability were always in place. Currently, I have now 16 years of public sector leadership under my belt. First with the city of Kent, Washington. There I managed the city's housing and human services investments and all of their strategic planning. And most recently, for the past 7 years, I've been working with the city of Seattle and their human services department. Most of that time, I had the privilege of serving as deputy director. And currently, as Josh mentioned, I'm wrapping up a 3-year tenure on Mayor Jenny Durkin's cabinet as the department head. Just for a little bit of context as to who the Human Services Department is, what we do, it is that department's mission to ensure that people are connected to the services they need to thrive. We do that as a funder. We do that as a convener. We also do that as a direct service provider. So it's a department, sort of mid-sized department, 400 employees. We invest a little more than $250 million annually to community-based organizations that help to address homelessness, address domestic violence and sexual assault, make sure people are fed. A big body of our work is addressing hunger. We also are in place to support public health. We, with King County, are the city-county partnership that support the public health department here in King County. We also want to promote community safety and have a number of initiatives that help, especially young people, prevent violence in their communities. And then we have a huge portfolio that ensures families and seniors have what they need to live healthy lives. We're the area agency on aging for King County. So it's sort of an odd role for a city to play in administering services countywide, but that's one of the roles that we serve. You know, threaded through all of that, we strive to bring racial justice into all aspects of our work. We, as a department, fully acknowledge the role that racism plays in systems, and that it is often those failures of systems that leave people in a vulnerable spot and needing many of our services. So that's just a point of introduction about who I am and about the department that I've had the privilege to work for over the past 7 years. I was asked to speak with all of you about integrity. I think that as leaders, our values, our set of values that we bring to that role is always critically important. And I hope to share some of what that value of integrity means to me and how I use it to orient the work that I've been a part of. This is by no means a training. I am not a trainer. I do not pretend to have all of the answers. I think it's upon each of us to define and understand what integrity means. That process can be very personal. It can change based on environment or team. But I'm hoping that through some of my experiences and lessons that I've learned, lessons that have required a moral compass, have required centering that value of honesty to lead me. But there have been a number of ways that those values, or that set of values that I have also been tested. And for me, you know, there are moments in my early life that I lean on when being asked to do something that might be misaligned with what I consider, uh, a decision that needs to be made or a decision that has been made. And I found that a lot of my own personal leadership lessons have really come more from my failures and my challenges than those that I have learned from success. And so, as Josh said, there are really some critical challenges in the city of Seattle and really across Washington State and our country that I have had the opportunity to work through. And I wanted to share just, 3 examples of where I have found that integrity, our own personal moral compass, has been critical in me having some level of success and have been, established for me as a way to motivate and continuously motivate my team. So the first example I want to talk about is the city's efforts to address homelessness. The second is ongoing work that I've been a part of to address racism. And the last, just a quick example of some of the work that the city and that I have been involved in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. But before jumping into those examples, I wanted to acknowledge just the reality that most of us in the public sector are leading from the middle, meaning none of us are sole decision makers or work alone to achieve results. As I was preparing for today, I was reminded of something I read a long time ago that's always stuck with me by a gentleman named Thomas Gilmore, who works for the Center for Applied Research. And, I'm paraphrasing here, but from that article, he reminds us that we all have people that look to us and people who we answer to. This is true at all levels of positionality within public service. Ultimately, we need to answer to the people we serve, constituents, and a team or workforce. And, for me, that has been the city of Seattle and King County, the mayor and her team, and the workforce at the Human Services Department. But I just think it's important to acknowledge that we're often caught in between the many bosses or constituents as we navigate our work. Many times it can feel impossible to use our own moral compass, our own set of values solely as guidance. Organizational integrity is something that we always strive for, but this idea of the middle, it really helps me consider the challenges and opportunities ahead. It helps me navigate the multiple priorities and styles that will be in front of me. It always, I find it helpful to just know where things sit organizationally and how that helps or hinders our success and our way of leading. This is, not central to what we're going to discuss today, but I think it's an important piece of leadership that's, I know, always on my mind and helps me pay attention to my values, the values of others, and hopefully can help me understand where there is strong value alignment. I'm sure this is something that's always on your mind and part of your constant struggle, but I think it's just worth acknowledging that we're, often navigating in this middle space. So with that, first I wanted to just talk a little bit about my experience at the city as the city embarks on the huge effort to address homelessness in Seattle and King County. Again, as I mentioned earlier, when I think about values and I think about motivations, often I lean on my own personal experiences, my lived experience, as a reminder and motivator I think having strong value, a strong awareness of our own values is critically important as leaders. And so I use some of my own experiences when I'm about to embark on something as big as addressing homelessness in a major US city. So for me, that starts with my upbringing. I am the product of public housing. I have experienced great poverty in my life. You know, that starts with being the son of a teenage mother who raised myself and my brother on her own. And through that experience, I have seen human services work. I have seen the supportive services and the consistency of housing move my family out of poverty and into education, wealth building through homeownership, and into productive, fulfilling professions that have an impact on our community. This is true now for my mother, for my brother, for myself. We have seen the services that we needed at a point in time in our lives have the desired impact. And that is always motivating for me. As a social worker, now as an administrator of many of the services my family leaned on in the past, I can remember, I can recall, and fully understand that these services matter, these services work, and that they have a huge impact on people's lives. So in King County, we have about 12,000 people experiencing homelessness at any one time. I've led an effort over the past 5 years to substantially add shelter and services across the board that support people experiencing homelessness. I'm really proud of that work. I've worked for two mayors who made homelessness a priority and have put a substantial amount of local general fund money into that effort. I am very data focused, and as a leader of a large organization on a priority project, data was sort of my first go-to in trying to just understand what the challenge was ahead of us. And what I saw immediately is that there were a disproportionate number of Black and Indigenous people on our streets. And I have over $130 million invested in addressing homelessness for the city. Our contracts all focused on one key outcome, an important outcome, which is exits to permanent housing. We know that housing is the only real solution to homelessness. And so it was an important aspect of the contract. But given this racial data, I needed our contracts, I needed our investments to do more. And so through multiple proposals to the mayor's office and to my team, required that providers, our grantees, sort of show their progress for connecting people to housing, but also require that they show us how their programs are moving the needle to change this disparity for Black and Indigenous people. In my mind, this seemed uncontroversial and simply a technical change that might help us invest in a different way, but also pay attention to how effective our investments in community-based organizations were, having hopefully positive results for this BIPOC community. But I found that this came with strong backlash. Providers questioned fair housing law. They did not want to create sort of priorities or tiers in their policies and programs for the people that they were serving. I quickly found through strong pushback that this change was not one that was simply technical, but this was an adaptive change that I was asking our community to make, and one that would really require the department to lean in. I had some alignment from some, not all, but some elected officials. And it really became a big part of my job to convince the providers, to convince the public that this was the right strategy. And that required a lot of technical assistance, a lot of convening of various different partners so that we could get on the same page. And the lesson for me is that here I had a strong set of values that helped me first notice the data and notice that things were not equitable. The system that we were a part of was not serving people in the same way. But it also sort of motivated me to not just get some pushback and lean on the contract, lean on the funding to be the change agent, if you will. But it really required some constant, continual quality improvement exercises that were tough, were really, really tough, and really shook the foundation of sort of what our grantees expected from the city, what they thought sort of came with city funds. And it really became a challenging body of work. And again, one that surprised me. I didn't expect that this was going to be as challenging as it was. I should share, the results have been really positive. These disparities very much still exist, but we are moving the needle. We're seeing that investments in grassroots organizations that are founded by and led by people of color, that serve people of color, are sort of have cultural competencies that can serve them in a better way. And so we are seeing an increase in exits to permanent housing for Black and Indigenous people across the board in our contracts. So the result was achieved, but it was an incredibly challenging exercise, but one that ultimately was motivated by a set of values. The other example that I wanted to share was, I mentioned that the department has a real strong value and is going through an exercise right now to become an anti-racist organization. And again, I sort of first lean on my own personal experiences. As I've mentioned, I grew up in public housing, grew up in a housing project just outside of Denver. And I also shared that the housing paired with support services for my family, it worked. My family prospered. I was able, I and my family were able to navigate out of poverty, but others did not. My Black and brown neighbors did not. They are currently raising a new generation in that same housing project. The system was very much designed for my family and families who look like me, and broken for so many others that didn't look like us. And so really since my early 20s, I've had to wrestle with this reality that systemic racism exists and that I benefit from it. And that unless there is, very specific, dedicated efforts to change that, the system will continue to work that way. Coming to the city of Seattle was really exciting for me. In Kent, we were still having conversations about diversity and the value of diversity, and those were good. Those were important conversations. But I came to the city of Seattle because they had a strong emphasis on race and social justice built into all departments. We have a race and social justice initiative that gives each department and department head a framework by which they can work in to help address racism in the community and in our organization. We have, at each department, we have what we refer to as change teams. And these are safe places where employees can go while on the clock and have really good conversations about how we might be able to move forward toward being an anti-racist organization and community. So there was sort of a structure in place for us collectively to address the issue of racism. But as I entered into the role of director 3 years ago, and in particular, as I entered into that role as a white male, I really had to think about that structure and decide pretty quickly if that was enough. If that structure was going to be enough for me to lead an organization down this path of being an anti-racist organization. And I found very quickly that I needed to adapt that structure to ensure that my integrity and the integrity of the work would be able to sort of be right-sized organizationally to keep this work moving forward. So very quickly, I changed the director's senior leadership team. And that senior leadership team and the appointments that I made to that team became a senior leadership team of 85% women, and there was great racial diversity as well, and important age diversity that exists on that team. So a leadership team led by women, led by BIPOC women, and led by BIPOC women of multiple different ages. I also stood up a employee advisory group. This was a very informal group of advisors, and I selected individuals intentionally that did not always agree with me, did not always agree with the current path that the department was on. That became a really important group for me to engage with, especially on conversations of race and racial equity. Over the last 3 years, I have leaned on that employee advisory group as I've wrestled with really important decisions, and they've been instrumental in helping to guide me past blind spots that I know I would have had it not been for this diverse group of employees at the department. Them paired with this new leadership team really helped me establish with them a set of values that were important to me, and quickly get value alignment with them, so that when we had to make decisions, and ultimately when I had to deliver those decisions to the mayor and to the community, they were well vetted, they were well thought out, and there was a diversity of opinion that went into guiding the decision. I also quickly advocated for and received budget to hire a strategic advisor out of the director's office. And this strategic advisor, it really was intended to be a development opportunity for new public servants who were looking for that next opportunity, and maybe curious about what department leadership looked like. And so these were kind of a rotating 1 year out of class strategic advisor opportunity. And both hires that I made were Black women, and they were instrumental in helping me to guide department initiatives, help us understand how we were a part of and how we could help implement some of the mayor's priorities, and just a really critical leadership role that now is part of the foundation of the director's office. So directors after me will all have access to this rotating strategic advisor that, again, is a great learning opportunity for people in the organization, but more importantly, another voice at the table who can help guide the director as they conduct their work. The other thing that I just wanted to highlight in this space is data. I've already shared that I enjoy data, I use data to help me make decisions. And we did not have in the department a data dashboard that helped the director see the workforce at the department and be able to see where maybe teams were lacking in diversity of voice and experience, but more importantly, of racial makeup. And so I directed our data team and our HR team to start working together to create a data dashboard that I could use on a monthly basis to really get a snapshot of what our workforce looked like, what various different teams maybe had blind spots because of the employees that were part of those teams. Again, it became, it's sort of something that I will leave as a legacy, because that data dashboard, which is something that we are fully transparent on, we post that on our InWeb. So it's not just a tool that the director uses, but it's a tool that managers, especially important hiring managers, can use as they think about where recruitment should be posted, how job opportunities and those recruitments can be written in order to get the expertise that the team needs. You know, I just wanted to share some of those things that I needed to do in order to feel supported as a white leader. You know, going in, I have a long history of gay and HIV/AIDS activism under my belt, and I know what that level of advocacy looks like. But I found that I really benefited from bringing others to the table. I needed to stay open to their feedback, and that the diversity of their experiences, their strategic thinking, it always made me a better leader and always impacted the work in a positive way. Finally, I just want to share quickly a little bit about work that I've been involved in during the pandemic. 2020 has been a year like no other for any of us. It's been, you know, over 100 years since we've had to experience the kind of pandemic like this. And, you know, it's, I was sharing sort of, you know, some personal motivations and personal sets of values that I lean on when challenging times or initiatives come up for me. And I really didn't have a blueprint for this one. I, you know, throughout my time as a public sector employee, have worked with emergency operations, and I understand sort of the community response and the coordinated action and the good planning that goes into preparing for something like this. But I found that when we were called to action in late February, early March, there really weren't a lot of guidelines, even value-based guidelines for us as a city. And so, you know, through that process of trying to figure out what people needed, trying to figure out what our grantees needed, what our workforce needed, while reassigning staff, while putting a full halt to our well-developed 2020 work plan, having to shift money and ask all levels of government for more money, and while being in real-time communication with the public, with our customers, and with staff, I felt a little overwhelmed, so I'll admit. There were times where, because I wasn't following a strategic plan, or some early or pre-thinking about what we were supposed to do in this very moment. There were times when I really felt a bit lost, and being lost while also feeling the pressure of so many other people looking to you for answers, it's a terrible feeling. And what I found that I could lean on were my set of values, integrity being one of them. And so at the core of integrity is honesty. And so, you know, I found that there were moments where I had to just flat out say, hey, I don't know what's next. But I trust that, you know, trust, another key value, another part of integrity, that I have the expertise on this team to figure it out. And so it was really a set of values that I was able to use as a leader, a set of values that were already established in the department. I leaned on those to help move us forward. I found that value alignment was there. We needed to get people into safer shelter spaces. We had to get people tested. We had to get workers PPE. We had to keep food and meal access in place. We had to ensure that healthcare was available. So there was strong alignment across the board. And again, I found that myself leading from the middle, but with willing and aligned partners, all I really had to do was continue to remind my team and the public about our shared values and about the things that we knew were important during this period of time. So navigating from from shared values and from a shared value proposition, it always made the work successful and always inspired innovation and creativity. And so I share that with you just to say that sometimes, you know, when you don't have the answers, when there's not a blueprint in front of you, your values as a leader, your values as an organization can really be what you lean on to keep yourself and others motivated. Sort of in wrapping up and hopefully getting us into conversation, I just wanted to sort of give a shout out for taking care of ourselves. Leadership is difficult, and we need our networks to keep us healthy, keep us motivated. And I think networks of people, whether those are friends, families, public sector colleagues, I have tapped into a network of anti-racist leaders. I'm on the board for Leadership Tomorrow, which has proven itself time and time again to be a good place for support and good thinking. But you know, if you can surround yourself with people who have shared values and a shared value for integrity, that will help you. It'll help not just take care of you, but it'll also help you be a stronger leader and help you to motivate others. So with that, I just wanted to share some of my own experiences recently as a way to maybe trigger or inspire good conversation today. Really appreciate some time to be with you. And Josh, I think maybe I'll hand it back to you to facilitate the conversation.
Yeah, perfect. I forgot to mention earlier in my opening comments, for those that have questions, feel free to, you can either raise your hand, which can be done through, I believe, the chat. If you open up the chat section, you can also just simply type your name in, and Yvonne will be monitoring all that. And so she'll be moderating on my behalf. She's done a terrific job up to this point, and why, you know, fix something that's not broken. Or if you would like, you can just you can type your question into the chat and she'll read it on your behalf. So with that, I will let folks ask some questions. Well, I have one if nobody's going to do it. So Yvonne, can I ask my question?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. So Jason, you'd said that you weave racial justice throughout everything that you do. Can you talk about that a little bit, and kind of what are some of the mechanisms you use? How do you like, how do you keep that front of mind as you're doing this type of work?
Yeah, thanks. It's not easy, and I don't know if I always do it well. But I think first, establishing and fully naming that that is your intention, I think goes a long way and helps to sort of circle the wagons on that one priority value. And so, some of what we've been able to do at the department, and some of what I have been part of directing, is that, our primary role as a department is that of a funder. We put out more than $250 million annually, and we typically do that through an RFP, an RFQ, some kind of process that helps us decide who we're going to invest in. There's, you guys are probably very familiar with results-based accountability. We use the results-based accountability framework to be very specific about what we hope we're able to purchase with these public dollars. And in that, we use this value around racial equity to be very specific about what change we hope these investments will make for BIPOC communities. So I mentioned one example around our homeless investments, where we moved away, well, we didn't move away. We kept our focus or our emphasis outcome on exits to permanent housing, but added another element that very much focused on how people were going to make sure that we were addressing the disparity for Black and Indigenous people. We've done that with our safety investments. We've done that with our youth and family investments, food investments. And so I think by explicitly naming that your intention is to serve a population who is currently underserved and being poorly served by a lot of public systems, and integrating that into, for our business, it's our funding process. It really helps to align our grantees and make sure that that racial equity is central to what they're trying to do every day. I would say, internally, so I often feel like, and I talked a little bit about this middle, but I feel like there's sort of like, I have three customers. I've got the mayor and her team, I've got the general public served by these community-based organizations, and then I have the workforce. And I find that, as I think about who my customer is, I am always sort of in equal parts thinking about those three constituents. And I think that the racial equity work has been more difficult internally. We are a government structure, one that has unions and lots of policy and rule, lots of history of how people are supported at work. What we have diagnosed, I think collectively, this isn't something that's unique to the Human Services Department, but what we've been able to diagnose is that some of those policies, some of those structures, some of those systems are not equitable and do not treat people in the same way, do not offer opportunity to people in the same way. And so we've had to comb through, and I try whenever possible to do this with my union partners, but we comb through policies and see if there are changes that we might be able to make so that those policies, those practices, those ways that we both recruit and support employees at the Human Services Department is done in a more racially equitable manner. We have a long way to go. And a lot of the systems, policies, and practices that are in place at the Human Services Department are conducted citywide. And so we have a long way to go, but that's just sort of like two quick examples of how we try to integrate racial equity into our funding for our external partner, and how we review and make alterations to policies that support the workforce internally.
Thank you so much, Jason. We also have a couple of people who are asking about your dashboard, and if possibly you might have an ability to share it or snap it and share it with this group, because we can share documentation afterwards. So that's
Great.
a question from a couple of people that are
curious. Yeah, I'll say, it's an internal document. It's a dashboard that we use internally. I do share it with staff, but it's not something that is secret or something that I view as something that should be hidden. So I'm happy to share that. Recognize that I'll grab one. It'll be a point in time. The data often shifts depending on who comes and who goes, but happy to share that document just so you can see the kind of data that I'm paying attention to as director.
Seems like there's a lot of interest there, so thank you for that. We appreciate that. And then I have C. Kavanaugh who has a question, and you can ask it directly right to Jason and start that dialogue. You have to unmute yourself first because everybody's muted.
Yeah, I had to find where it was. Thanks. Okay, so I actually had a question about helping people, and what it is asking the question about the skills that you and your family used to get out of poverty. And if you use those same skill sets to try to guide others and motivate them to also leave housing or in the bad situations that they're currently in. And how has that helped you with your programs?
Yeah, thanks. 100%. In fact, and not my intention to sort of overshare, personally do an overshare here, but growing up in this housing project, my brother and I relied on a lot of assistance, especially just with after school homework, and we didn't have anyone in our family, extended family or immediate family, who had ever been to university, so just didn't know how to navigate that. Very few of us in my extended family owned homes or were building any level of wealth. Everyone was living paycheck to paycheck, and so early on in my life, my heroes, the people who I considered my coaches, the folks that were really helping me out, they were social workers. And so it was no mistake that when I finally got the opportunity to go to university, the first in my extended family, I wanted to be just like them. I wanted to help others. And so it is the lessons, of course, by those individuals. But more importantly, it was the fact that the city that I lived in supported with local dollars an investment that allowed folks like me and my brother to get the assistance we needed when we needed it. And the impact that I saw that make so quickly in just one generation to break the cycle of poverty, that I continue to be inspired by. And so it has become my life's work to make sure that housing stability and services for people in that housing are available. I, talk about sort of dashboarding. The thing that motivates me more than anything is when I get to see the impact of our work, when I get to see the investments the city makes and the real impact that it has on families across the board. As a social worker, I'm very interested in offering my learning, my expertise, my sometimes opinions about how programs should be developed and operating. And so I have in my career been able to offer insight from my lived experience, but also from my learned experience and professional experience that have made real differences programmatically and more importantly for individuals. Appreciate that question, and it's a constant motivation for me, and I just love being in the work that I'm in because I continue to have an impact. That is, I acknowledge that is rare. Sometimes, you know, folks are in jobs and the motivation is I need the paycheck, or I need, you know, and they're really unhappy in my job. I've been very, very fulfilled in mine. So anyway, just appreciate the question, and it's a good one.
The next question is from Daniela Bremer, and Peter S. will be on deck thereafter for getting ready.
Hi, this is Daniela. Thanks so much for your sharing, what you have shared. Very inspiring. I'm curious.
Here are some results.
Sorry, I'm being talked to here. I was wondering about when you have teams that are based on expertise or self-selection, or for whatever reason are not diverse, and you know it. Are there any sort of tools you can recommend for those teams to be more aware of the equities lens, or applying an equity lens that perhaps doesn't come natural to those team members?
Yeah, you know, in our city structure, I mentioned the Race and Social Justice Initiative, as well as the change teams that exist in the department. And so, you know, I'm thinking about one particular team that was pretty much all white women of a certain age. And it was a team of 5. They were getting ready to embark on critically important work to support seniors across the county. And what I required of that team and that team's manager is that they engage with the change team directly. What they wound up doing is, through that engagement, there were 2 professionals from the department who are regular participants in the change team, who sort of self-selected to help by joining this team of 5. And so we just had to work out, you know, with their work plan and with the work that was on their plate, how we could adjust things to allow for this diversity. It was both racial and age diversity that we needed on that team, that we were able to tap into this change team to provide. And so I saw that as a really successful response to this one team and a planning exercise that they were about to embark on. I'll say that's not always possible. But what is possible is that data, we look at that data, the senior leadership team of the department looks at that data every month. So it's not just a tool for me, it's a tool for our entire leadership team. It requires, you know, just being able to be, you know, to have the opportunity to be confronted with data that could point to, you know, gaps or blind spots. It allows us as a senior leadership team to understand if we need to, you know, change things around, merge teams, see what kind of expertise is missing. But more importantly, when we have the opportunity to hire someone in, it helps us understand what that recruitment needs to look like. So I see it both like on the micro, yes, we've been able to, you know, make adjustments and fill some gaps that we've been able to see through the data. But on the macro, it helps us in planning, it helps us in recruitment.
Thank you. And Peter S. is up, and behind him is Michael.
Hey, good morning. I was very intrigued by the scenario around sharing of values, and particularly during a time of crisis, which I guess became the backbone and the fiber of which you were able to do your good work. I'm curious, were those values something that had already been established through a department exercise, or were they values that you believed were necessary in order to survive the situation? And I realize I got 3 minutes, there's 3 minutes left, and I got a boogie for a meeting at 1, but curious about any kind of insight. Thank you.
Yeah, so the quick with just 2 minutes left answer is yes. we went through an exercise as a senior leadership team to explicitly name our values. We went through a facilitated process to sort of go through first as individuals, what do we value? And then two, looking at the work, what are the values of the work that we conduct? And then three, given everything that's been shared, where is their value alignment? So we went through that exercise as a senior leadership team. I asked us to go through that process when I think I mentioned that I sort of changed what our senior leadership team looked like. And so right at the beginning of that change, I wanted to make sure there was strong value alignment. So it was very intentional. Those were established. And so when COVID hit, we sort of had that as a backbone, as the fabric of what we use to conduct our work already established. We didn't have to go through that and sort of like go through a trusting exercise or a get to know you exercise. That was all spelled out early on.
Thank you.
And Michael, if we have time for your question.
Yeah, this is Michael. Thank you so much for this conversation. I'm very curious about the rotating senior advisor and the mechanics of that. Is it project oriented when they're, needs assessment, gathering, research, project oriented? Is that how they're selected for that position? And what happens in transition after?
Yeah, really good question. It is. So, when we develop our annual work plan and have, fully established what work is going to be conducted out of the director's office, it's that body of work that then helps me to understand, okay, well, I'm going to need a research person, or I'm going to need a policy person, or I'm going to need someone to help me with some complicated politics. So each time, and I've been part of hiring a strategic advisor in the director's office twice, and each one looked a little different based on the work plan in front of us. But it is, I didn't shy away from calling out what this strategic advisor position was. It's a development opportunity. And it is also a development opportunity aimed at getting people of color into the director's office and into future leadership roles. So it's both like, okay, if I'm a candidate or thinking about taking this position, I can think, all right, it sounds like it's project-based or it's research, I have expertise there. But it also allows individuals to think, you know what? Yeah, I see myself as a future leader inside the city, and this sounds like a good opportunity for me. So I think when people consider whether or not they're going to apply, they consider both aspects, the specifics of the work, but also the opportunity that it could provide them.
It's an awesome model. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And I want to be respectful of everybody's time. It is 1:01.
Thank you.
But I do, if we have an opportunity, I know, Steve, you had a question. I don't know if you wanted to have an opportunity to ask it.
I guess we're into overtime. Jason, thanks a bunch for your remarks. It really just, I teach at the University of Washington, and I teach a class on organizational management, and what you talked about with regard to the technical and adaptive challenges and the anti-racism initiative that you sort of deepened and enhanced at HSD is just a perfect fit for that course. So I wish my students had been on the line. My question is, and it's in the chat if you have a second to look at it, I'm curious about the process you use to identify the measures that you put in the dashboard. And I don't need a long answer, but I'm just curious whether that was something that you sort of turned over to some folks who were sort of particularly adept at measurement, or whether that was something that you had sort of organization-wide consultations and conversations about, or did the leadership team do it? What was the gist of that?
Yeah, thanks. Good question. So sort of my typical process is to, name to my senior leadership team the questions that I'm sitting with. And so I had questions about our workforce, but when it was time to build the dashboard, I needed a partnership between HR, who holds a lot of this information, and our data team. So these were, very talented data analysts who knew sort of what are the right data sets that'll help answer Jason's questions. And so I really needed a partnership between HR and my data team in order to create that dashboard.
I think that wraps up questions.
All right, Yvonne, thank you. Josh, thank you. And just really appreciate having a moment to be with you and to be part of your regular gathering. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you so much for taking the time and hanging in there with us. I am so thankful that we were able to get you in. This was just great and totally fills my bucket. So thank you.